reciting the Qur'an at the time of death, its wisdom and relevance. A common question often arises: is there any recommendation to recite the Qur'an when someone is nearing death? Can the recitation of the Qur'an bring peace or benefit to the dying person? And is it true that Shaitan, Satan, exerts his strongest efforts to mislead a person at the moment of death? If so, can reciting the Qur'an help keep Shaitan away and help the person remain firm in faith? Man? This topic indeed has several branches, and scholars have discussed it in detail. The struggle at the time of death. The moment of death is one of the most crucial and challenging moments in a person's life. It is a time when a person's true faith, patience, and sincerity are tested. The Prophet taught us that indeed, deeds are judged by their final actions. Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. This means that whatever state a person dies upon will determine their ultimate standing before Allah. Hence, Shaitan intensifies his efforts at that time, striving with all his might to make the believer slip, lose hope, or die upon disbelief or sin. The story of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah. One of the most well-known incidents that illustrates this spiritual struggle is the story of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. May Allah have mercy on him. As he lay on his deathbed, his son Abdullah was by his side. Imam Ahmad would occasionally lose consciousness, and when he awoke, he was heard saying, "Not yet, not yet." He would then faint again and repeat the same words upon regaining consciousness. Perplexed, Abdullah asked his father, "Oh, my dear father, what makes you say, 'Not yet, not yet'?" Imam Ahmad replied, "My son, do you not see? Shaitan was standing near me, biting his hand in regret, saying, 'Oh Ahmad, you have escaped me. You have escaped me.' And I responded to him, 'Not yet, not until I have truly died. As long as I am alive, I am not safe from your deception.'" This profound story reflects the depth of awareness and humility of the righteous. Even a great scholar like Imam Ahmad feared falling into Shaitan's traps until his very last breath. It also confirms that indeed, Shaitan's final and fiercest attack occurs when a believer is about to depart from this world. The benefit of Qur'an, recitation at this time. As for reciting the Qur'an near a dying person, scholars have mentioned that it is recommended, particularly the recitation of Surah Yasin. This is based on the Hadith. Recite Yasin over your dying ones, reported by Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah. Although the authenticity of this hadith has been a subject of scholarly discussion, many scholars consider it permissible and beneficial to recite Qur'an near the dying person with the intention of comforting them and invoking Allah's mercy. The recitation of the Qur'an can bring tranquility, soothing remembrance, and spiritual strength, helping the person remain steadfast in the testimony of faith, La ilaha illa Allah, at that most critical moment. The importance of steadfastness, Thabat. At the time of death, the believer's greatest need is to remain firm in faith and to utter the Shahadah sincerely. The Qur'an says, Allah keeps firm those who believe with the firm word in the worldly life and in the hereafter. Qur'an Surah Ibrahim 4:7. Therefore, any act that strengthens one's faith and brings the remembrance of Allah to the heart, such as reciting or listening to the Qur'an, is highly virtuous and comforting at that moment. Is it recommended to recite the Qur'an while a person is dying? Now, returning to the first part of the question, is it recommended to recite the Qur'an in the presence of someone who is dying? This matter has been discussed among the scholars, and there is a difference of opinion between the major schools of Islamic jurisprudence. The scholarly opinions, the Hanafa, Shafi'ah, and Hanbala schools of thought consider it recommended to recite the Qur'an, particularly Surah Yasin, when a person is in the final moments of life. On the other hand, the Malik school of thought holds a different position, stating that it is not permissible to recite the Qur'an at that time. So this raises an important question. When the scholars differ, whose opinion should we follow? Should we simply follow the majority, or should we base our judgment on the Qur'an and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet? The clear and correct approach is that our standard is always the Qur'an, and the authentic Sunnah, not merely the number of scholars who hold a view. The evidence and reasoning behind each view. Those who consider reciting Surah Yasin at the time of death recommended have relied on certain narrations, such as the Hadith, "Recite Yasin over your dying ones," reported by Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah. However, upon examination, the Hadith is weak and does not meet the standard of authenticity required to establish a firm ruling in Islamic law. Therefore, the basis for recommending it is not strong. The position of Imam Malik, may Allah have mercy on him, and those who followed his school argued that reciting the Qur'an at the moment of death was not practiced by the Prophet nor by his noble companions, may Allah be pleased with them. Their reasoning is twofold. The narrations supporting it are weak and cannot be used as reliable evidence. There is no report that the Prophet or his companions ever recited the Qur'an in the presence of a dying person, even though many of them witnessed such moments. This absence of practice from the early generations, despite their immense love for the Qur'an, suggests that it was not part of their Sunnah. 4. The correct approach, therefore, the stronger opinion, and the one supported by evidence, is that reciting the Qur'an near the dying person is not a confirmed Sunnah. However, there is no harm in reminding the dying person of Allah, encouraging them gently to say the Shahadah, the testimony of faith, and keeping the atmosphere filled with peace and remembrance. As the Prophet said, "Prompt your dying ones to say, La ilaha illa Allah," Sahih Muslim. That is the clear Sunnah, to help the dying person conclude their life upon faith and the remembrance of Allah. Summary. There is a difference of opinion among the scholars. The Hanaf, Shafi'i and Hanbali schools recommend reciting Surah Yasin. The Maliki school discourages it, seeing no authentic basis. The hadiths used as evidence for this practice are weak. The stronger opinion, supported by the Qur'an and the authentic Sunnah, is that it is not prescribed to recite the Qur'an at the time of death, but rather to focus on helping the person remember Allah and say the Shahadah.